Hello, everybody. I am Jaidin McCann here at Jasper Consultancy, and I have the honor and esteemed privilege of sitting down with Thomas Rosenberg of Regenerate Coaching. He coaches executive level leaders and specializes in managing change, which I am very excited to dive into today. I think this is a key areas that lots of leaders miss and don't necessarily get right. And so would love to help educate and help leaders better lead through moments and times of change. So Thomas, let's dive in. Happy to have you. Tell me, managing change is really great clickbait, a really great topic we see all the time, but what is it specifically about managing change, right? There's so much that goes into it. What is it that you want leaders to really know?
Well, a pleasure being here, Jaden. I'm so glad we can make this happen. So often we hear about managing change as implementing a new software system. There's going to be a change in workflow, and these select folks need to know how it's going to impact that workflow. But that's the dusting of the ice on top of the iceberg, in my opinion. It is really superficial. Yes, it's important to know how people are adjusting to change, but there's also a just understanding neurologically how we face change and how that affects, because as someone who I was in conversation with a few weeks ago said, if you think you're making decisions with your brain, you're wrong. Right? So how you manage change, how you face strong energy of needing to make a decision and not being aware of what's going on in your body and how you're responding to it, what are the stories, that's going to affect the quality of that decision making. That might affect the quality of collaboration, of creativity. It might lead to burnout. So there are bottom line issues, and there's also top line opportunities that you might be missing in terms of innovation. So there's a lot of different elements when you're thinking about how you manage change and how that ripples out from you as an executive to the rest of your team and the organization.
I love that. Can you dive in a little bit more for me? Just, you mentioned your body, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, when I think of managing change, I think of it from a strategical level, right?
Mm-hmm.
A high level of, of course, leading with your heart, right? How are people going to feel about this? How does it affect them? How can we have those conversations? But when you think of, introspectively, hey, this is how my body is reacting. How do you recognize that, identify that, and work to, move forward and overcome that?
So I'll just make a slight detour here. So what we're talking about is pointing towards interception. And interception is known as the sixth sense. So it's actually being aware. It's not the gut so much like your gut feeling. That could also be the sixth sense, but it's being aware of what is happening in your body. So we have these tendencies that we adapt wisely as kids, these conditioned tendencies in certain situations. And that might be strong energy, like, oh, I have to make a decision. Well, what do you do when you have to make a decision? Do you freeze? Are you scared and like I might make a mistake? What's going to happen if I make a mistake, right? And so if you just feel that I'm making a mistake, what does that feel like in your body? All of a sudden, your shoulders go up, you get really narrow, your breath gets shallow, and you're like, oh God, I have to make a decision, right? So how is that affecting those around you? Because your experience of me, Jaden, in this moment, as I do this, is very different than when I started the call. You can feel that in your body. And so if I'm like, oh, okay, I have to make a decision. What does that feel like? Why is this making me apprehensive? What's the story behind how I'm responding? And how can I bring myself back to what and who matter most to me in order to make that decision effectively? And just recognize that. And so that's going to improve the quality of the decision. And it's also going to reduce stress and burnout because you're going to be recognizing, oh, this is what I'm doing to myself. And this is how I can reconnect to myself so I can more easily connect to others and with others.
Absolutely. I think a lot of leaders, whatever change is coming, right? There's reorgs and with the layoffs and hiring freezes as of late.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are just a few changes. Change is constant, it's inevitable,
Right.
right? If you want to stay on top of the market, you need to constantly be changing and form an agile and innovative team. Would you say, that leadership, right, that needs to lead through it? I think sometimes instead of taking it in personally, and adapting and dealing with it and then sharing it out and dealing with it with the team. I shouldn't say dealing with it, it sounds so impersonal. But spreading the news to the team, which can be difficult. I think rarely they take the time to absorb, and they more do a strategic action plan of, okay, when I share this out, how does that go? How are they going to deal with it? And so because they haven't personally, taken the time to deal with it
Mm-hmm.
themselves, would you say it shows an effect on how it spreads out to the team?
Oh, totally. Because people are feeling that impersonal distance that you're pointing towards. And it might be because you're closed off your heart because there might be layoffs. And you're like, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel the pain that I'm causing to all these families by laying off these folks. And so there's also the question of all of these messages that we receive from society. How are we supposed to show up? What's the right way? It needs to be results oriented rather than cultivating. Well, if you're not going to get the best out of your people because they are the asset, right?
Amen.
You're not going to get the best out of your people if you don't make them feel appreciated and psychologically safe. And
Absolutely.
so you need to know how that's showing up in your body before and integrate that enough. Not to say that you have to process everything before sharing it out with the team. For some, sharing it out with the team might actually be part of that integration process, but to have it real and to be authentic and just say, this pains me. I was in a really bizarre situation running an office here in San Francisco for an advisory company. And I had been begging to hire somebody because we just didn't have the bandwidth. And I finally got approval. And I was like, finally. And we had this really dynamic person identified. And we gave her an offer. She said yes. And I was ecstatic. I'm like, woohoo. It's like we have more bandwidth. We have a really smart person who can help us. The next morning, the first email in my inbox from my boss was, let her go. And I
Oh,
was like, but wait a minute, we've been talking about this for weeks. Why? We don't have the money. I'm like, but you've already agreed that we need to invest in order to achieve our goals. And I can't work 20 hours a day. Right. And so it's like, how do you, and so it's this conundrum, right? It's like, how are we supposed to show up? And I don't know what my former boss was trying to prove to me, but it was really perplexing and painful. And I just had to read the thread because I was as perplexed as she was, you know?
oh, that's awful. That would be crushing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you.
But
I feel like, yeah, there
it
was
was
better
heartbreaking,
preparation that could have been done for sure
right?
to avoid this. But would you say, yeah, that first step really, that introspective, okay, let me take it in so then I can best, give her that news and allow her to take it in the best.
Mm-hmm. Right. But it's also being able to say, okay, so how can I connect to myself? Because if we don't honor our own dignity first, if we can't feel ourself, we have a very hard time feeling anybody else.
Yeah. And that leads over. I mean, I've seen a number of layoffs being in talent acquisition and executive search, especially, since June of 2021, was it now?
Mm-hmm.
And even then, right, but COVID was a thing. And so, I've seen a number of them. And really, I do think the way companies and leaders within those companies handle layoffs
Mm-hmm.
makes a massive difference. People
Mm-hmm.
pay attention, people post about it, people talk about it to their future employers. Your entire brand reputation is on the line.
Yeah.
Stock market value on the line with how you deal with even that one change of layoffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the countless amounts of change. You lose your top performers, they go and they can badmouth you to other places. It's there's so much that goes into it. And I think exactly right. If leaders could take the time, no matter what the change, and absorb and really think about how this affects everyone else on a personal level, and then go out and say, how can we best approach this, right? Not just
Mm-hmm.
as a whole, right? Hey, 500 of you are getting laid off, or, hey, we're doing a reorg. But hey, you personally, this is how this affects you. How can I make this transition the best for you personally?
Mm-hmm. Right.
um, it makes a huge difference. And I really think if, leaders could take one thing away from this call, it's absolutely to take that time, reflect, introspect, and then spread and really have that personal connection. Especially, yeah, corporate America today, I think, has gotten a little too impersonal, and let's bring it back, right? We have the data to show that the more you invest in your people, they invest
Mm-hmm.
in you, and it increases productivity and performance and all of these things that drive overall business success.
Yeah.
But we skip over the people part, right? Where we take the time and really invest in people.
Yes. And, it's hard to shift people from to the other side of the ledger, right? Because you can't officially own people, but they are an asset. And the company doesn't exist if you don't have people.
Absolutely. I always say, and I'll keep saying this, if you've heard me say this before and are tired of it, I do not apologize. I'm going to keep saying it. But why is it? The business wins out over people when the people are your business. When you make strategic decisions, the people are your business. And so it should always be a people first mindset. And hey, how can we solve this problem together rather than, oh, we have maybe a budget problem. Let's cut people to solve it rather than let's come together and use our people to solve it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And there are plenty of examples out there of organizations when you've given them the news and given them the agency to say, okay, if we all need to cut our salaries 30% so nobody gets laid off, yes, it's a sacrifice, but it's a lot better than losing everybody, right? And then as they also have agency in seeing the business build back so that they can come back to full salary and perhaps even a greater salary.
Absolutely. I've offered to do that. I know lots of other really amazing leaders that have offered to do that. I Not that I was putting myself in the amazing leader category, that was a separate statement, but I absolutely agree. I think if you can take a 30% hit, why not to save one, two other people's jobs? You hear it all the time, mass layoffs and then executives getting, millions and millions more in bonuses. And I'm like, why? Why is this the thing? But again, I think we should be invested as leaders in title to be true leaders and not just managers or,
Mm-hmm.
strategic, cold-hearted people within an organization that view their people as numbers. I understand, you can't personally know everyone and be affected by their family, and these are hard decisions, but I do think there's a better way. And I agree with you. It does start with that introspection and that, hey, how can we approach this? How does this make me feel? What if it were me, right? That empathetic approach. What
Mm-hmm.
would I want to see out of this? I think it would make a big difference.
You make a huge difference. For me, leadership is a way of being. It's a way to walk through the world. It's not only associated with title and responsibilities.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. I wish we could dive into this topic for hours. I know we're out of time. Let's connect again because I can't wait to hear more of your insights on managing change. I think it's a huge, important topic that affects your bottom line, your top performers, productivity, engagement, all of the things. Change management is inevitable, and we have to be good at it and continuously get better at it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Thomas. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining us today.